Okay, I want you to picture the modern dating scene for a second. Just, pull out your phone, mentally open up the apps. You've got the endless swiping, the ghosting,
Situationship.
situationships that just go nowhere, the constant pressure to have the perfect profile. It feels, well, what's the word?
Exhausting is usually the word I hear. Or chaotic.
Chaotic is exactly right. It feels like the Wild West. But here's the thing, we're digging into some research today that argues this chaos, it isn't actually new.
Right.
In fact, these sources are claiming that if you want to understand Tinder and Hinge, you shouldn't be looking at data from 2024. You should be looking at the biblical era of the judges.
Which is a pretty heavy comparison because if you know your history, the era of the judges was, I mean, it was a disaster.
Right. It's basically the dark ages of ancient Israel. The book of Judges ends with that famous, really ominous line. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
And that is the hook. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. The argument here is that this is the perfect diagnostic for modern dating.
Hmm.
We are living in a time of just radical autonomy. Everyone is their own king, their own queen, deciding what's true based on how they feel on a Friday night.
Moral relativism as a dating strategy.
Exactly. And the result is the same as it was back then. It's confusion, fragmentation, and a lot of people getting hurt.
But this is where it gets really interesting,
Hmm.
because into that chaos, our sources drop a book that, honestly, most people think is just a nice, gentle romance.
The Book of Ruth.
Yeah, usually when I hear about Ruth, it's this sweet story about a woman gleaning in a field. It's very peaceful.
But the material we're deep diving into today, specifically this framework called redeeming romance, it treats Ruth very, very differently. It argues that Ruth is not a love story in the Hallmark sense,
It's a war manual.
a war manual, a polemic against the spirit of the age. That was the phrase that really stuck out to me.
Me too.
It's a countercultural manifesto. The whole premise is that this Ruth archetype challenges everything we think we know about attraction, about waiting for the one, and even about gender roles.
It takes on the princess syndrome, the young men trap, and the modern aversion to submission.
Yeah, and so the mission for this deep dive is to figure out, does this ancient code actually work? Because the source makes a really bold claim.
That if you're dating like the world, or Moab as they call it,
Right. Moab.
you can't expect a kingdom result. You can't use blueprints from a hookup culture to build a covenant marriage.
Precisely. It's about sanctified nonconformity.
So let's start where the story starts, with the geography. I admit I initially glossed over this, but the source screams that this is critical. It calls it the theology of geography. Why does it matter so much that they were in Moab?
So the story opens with the family leaving Bethlehem, which means house of bread, and going to Moab to escape a famine. Now, to us, that just sounds like moving from New York to LA or something.
Right, a practical move.
But biblically, Moab isn't just a place. The Moabites were historical enemies of Israel. They worshipped Chemosh, a deity associated with, well, with child sacrifice and sensual indulgence.
Okay, so in the metaphor our source is building, Moab isn't a spot on a map. It represents a specific mindset.
Exactly. Moab represents the secular dating marketplace. It's a realm governed by transactional value, visual lust, and immediate gratification.
The world where relationships are basically consumable goods. If it feels good, do it. If it stops feeling good, you leave.
And that's why the argument is that the very first step in godly dating isn't finding the right person.
It's renouncing the wrong location.
This is the system reset. When Ruth chooses to go with Naomi back to Bethlehem, she isn't just moving her furniture. She makes that famous declaration, "Your people shall be my people, and your God my God."
The source calls that cultural apostasy.
It is. She had to delete her Moabite programming.
That's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. Because we like to think we can live in Moab, consume the media, date by the world's rules, play the games, but still somehow end up with a Bethlehem marriage.
And the source is very firm on this.
Yeah.
You can't. It argues that you cannot build a kingdom marriage using materials from Moab. If your conflict resolution, your boundaries, your definition of commitment, if it all looks exactly like the world's,
You're not operating in the Ruth archetype.
you're still in Moab. You've just put a religious label on it.
So it requires this alien mindset. You have to be willing to be a foreigner to the culture, to be at home in the covenant.
Correct. You have to be willing to look weird to your friends.
Which brings us to part 2, because once Ruth gets to Bethlehem, she definitely looks weird. Or at least she acts so differently than the typical advice we hear. This is where the source takes a sledgehammer to the princess syndrome.
Oh, this is a big one.
We've all heard it in church circles. Wait for your Boaz. Just sit tight, guard your heart, be a daughter of the king, and eventually some prince will come find you.
It sounds nice.
It sounds very nice, but the source argues it is completely unbiblical. Ruth did not arrive in Bethlehem and wait to be discovered. She didn't just sit in the tent hoping Boaz would walk by and notice her aura.
No, she arrived and immediately asked, "Let me go to the field and glean."
She went to work.
She went to work. And the source emphasizes this idea of industry as attraction.
Yeah.
Boaz didn't notice her because she was posing or posting some curated selfie.
No.
He noticed her because the foreman said she has continued from early morning until now.
She was sweating in the sun.
Yeah.
Working among the poor. I mean, that's not exactly the damsel in distress vibe.
Not at all. And this brings up a really crucial definition from the source regarding the Hebrew term for a wife, iser kenegdo.
Which we usually translate as helper, right?
We do.
And let's be honest, helper sounds a bit, I don't know, administrative, like an assistant.
It does have that connotation in English. But the source points out that Ezers is often used in military contexts in the Bible. God is often called the Ezer of Israel. It doesn't mean a subordinate assistant. It means a military ally.
A military ally.
Or reinforcement.
Wow, that changes the dynamic significantly.
It shifts the perspective entirely. The Boaz archetype, the high-value, godly man, he isn't looking for a dependent to rescue. He's looking for a partner to war alongside.
The source calls this the work test.
The work test. Ruth proved her capacity for chale, which means valor, strength, or substance out in the field before she ever entered the home.
So if you're just sitting around waiting for a man to give you a life, you're missing the point. The Ruth strategy is to build a life that a man wants to join.
Exactly. It's about demonstrating you have the grit to sustain a legacy.
Speaking of Boaz, let's talk about him for a second, because the source brings up a concept that I found really provocative, the young men trap.
Yes. This is based on a specific verse where Boaz praises Ruth. He says, "You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich."
Which implies she could have. I mean, she was a young widow. Naturally, you'd think she'd be drawn to guys her own age, right?
Of course. The young men represent vitality, swag, peer validation. They offer excitement, aesthetic compatibility. They're the guys who look good on paper and great in photos.
But the source warns that this is a trap.
It is a trap.
Why, though? I mean, who doesn't want chemistry?
It's a trap because often young men, and this is an archetype, it's not just about age.
Sure.
They lack chale. They lack substance. The source argues that young men might offer a relationship, but they can't yet offer a legacy. They haven't built anything. They're often consumed with their own becoming.
Whereas Boaz
is established.
Huh.
The text implies he was significantly older. He calls her daughter. He likely didn't have the cool factor of the young guys in the village.
He might not have been her type.
Probably not. But he possessed the legal, the financial, and the spiritual weight to be a goal redeemer.
That is a massive pivot for a modern dater. The source is basically saying you have to die to the idol of chemistry, that instant spark to awaken to the value of hesed.
Hesed, which is a Hebrew word that's so hard to translate.
Yeah.
It's loyal love, covenantal kindness.
It's the kind of love that sticks around when the feelings fade.
Exactly. The source argues for strategic maturity over just a vibe. Ruth needed security and redemption, not just a boyfriend to hang out with.
It's the difference between asking, does this guy make me laugh, and can this guy protect my future?
That's it. And recognizing that difference is what separates the Ruth archetype from the modern dater who is just, chasing a dopamine hit.
Okay, so she's working hard. She's ignoring the young men with the swag. Now we get to the scene that usually makes people in church Bible studies a little nervous.
A threshing floor.
The threshing floor. Ruth chapter 3, the midnight meeting. Ruth goes to Boaz at night while he's sleeping, uncovers his feet, and lies down. The source calls this strategic purity, but let's be real, to a modern reader, and probably to an ancient one too, it looks forward. Maybe even scandalous.
Oh, it looks scandalous. If you read it without the cultural context, it absolutely looks like seduction.
Yeah.
But the source insists this was not a seduction attempt. It was a high court petition.
Unpack that. How is lying at a man's feet a legal petition?
So when she uncovers his feet and asks him to spread his wings over her, she's using very specific legal language. The Hebrew word there is kanaf. It refers to the corner of a garment, but it also means wings, like the wings of God.
So she's not asking for a hookup.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. She is asking him to fulfill his legal obligation as a kinsman redeemer to marry her and protect her. She is essentially saying, you are the tangible expression of God's protection for me. Do your duty.
And the source contrasts this so sharply with what they call the poker face dating game.
This is such a critical point for today. Modern dating tells you to hide your interest.
Wait 3 days to text.
Play hard to get.
Don't look too desperate.
Right. The goal is to maintain ambiguity so you don't get hurt.
The anti-poker approach.
Ruth played with a completely open hand. She went to the threshing floor, a place of total exposure, and literally laid her future at his feet. The source argues that this kind of vulnerability is strength.
There was a line in the notes that just jumped out at me. You cannot redeem what is hidden.
That is profound. Think about it. By showing her hand, her poverty, her widowhood, her need, and her hope, she allowed Boaz to see exactly what he was redeeming.
If you hide behind a cool girl mask,
You prevent the man from actually knowing you, and therefore, from truly committing to you.
so it's courageous transparency versus manipulative games. She risked rejection to gain redemption.
She did, and that courage is what spurred Boaz into action. He calls her a woman of noble character right there on the threshing floor.
Now, this leads us to a topic that is probably the most controversial part of this whole thing. We have to talk about the boss versus husband paradox.
Yeah, this is a sociological observation the source makes, and it's meant to sting a little. It explores the tension around submission.
And submission is a loaded word. It makes people bristle.
Yeah.
But the source makes this really interesting comparison between the corporate world and the domestic world.
It breaks it down like this. The boss offers a transactional relationship. He uses a woman's labor for his profit. Loyalty is conditional. It's employment at will. If the budget gets cut, you're gone.
And yet, modern women will align their schedules, their attire, their energy, their creativity to the boss's vision to get ahead. We call that being a professional. We do it enthusiastically.
Right. But then you look at the husband in this biblical framework, the godly husband, the Boaz archetype. He offers a covenantal relationship. He is biblically commanded to die for his wife. He uses his strengths for her flourishing, not his profit. Yet this is often where the resistance comes in.
So the source is asking, why do we so readily submit to the one who uses us but fight the one who is commanded to die for us?
Exactly. And it reframes submission not as losing power or being a doormat, but as strategic alignment for redemption.
I liked the corporate analogy here because it made it click for me. It's about mission alignment.
Right. I mean, think about it. An employee can't be empowered if they are constantly fighting the corporate mission. They get sidelined.
Yep.
In the same way, the source argues a wife cannot be fully covered or redeemed, brought into a place of rest, if she is constantly fighting her husband's headship.
The logic flow in the document was interesting. It went yielding to the protector,
Leads to receiving protection.
which leads to gaining inheritance.
It's about recognizing that Boaz cannot protect what does not align with him. When Ruth identifies herself as your servant, it triggers his obligation to protect. It's not about degradation. It's about unlocking his capacity to serve and elevate her.
So it effectively asks the listener to evaluate their own independence. Is your current independence actually preventing the protection you desire?
That's the hard question. Are you fighting the very thing that could bring you rest?
Now, before we wrap up, we have to acknowledge that Ruth didn't just figure all this out on her own. She wasn't some dating genius. She had help. We have to talk about the Naomi interface.
Mentorship. This is the final piece of the puzzle. Ruth succeeded because she submitted to wisdom she didn't possess herself.
Right, she was a foreigner. She didn't know the laws or the customs of Israel. Naomi was the strategist behind the whole scene.
But the source has a pretty giant warning label here about toxic mentorship.
It does. It warns that not every older woman is a Naomi. Just because someone is older doesn't mean they are wise.
Which leads to the witch test.
The witch test.
Yes, it sounds dramatic, but the point is vital. The source says, if a mentor advises you to use your sexuality to control a man, or teaches you to view men as the enemy, or as a bank account to be raided,
That is not wisdom.
that is rebellion. The source calls it witchcraft.
That is strong language.
Right.
But I guess the distinction is about the goal of the advice.
Exactly. True wisdom builds the house. Naomi taught Ruth how to appeal to Boaz's honor, not his lust. She taught her how to trigger his integrity. If your mentor is making you bitter against men or teaching you to play games, she's leading you back to Moab, not to Bethlehem.
So we've got this Ruth code fully laid out now. It's comprehensive. Let's just recap the pillars for everyone listening.
Okay, first, it's a total renunciation of the world, leaving Moab. You have to change your location mentally and spiritually before you change your relationship status.
Second, it's the anti-princess. Attraction via industry. You don't wait to be rescued, you work to be ready. You show your strength out in the field.
Third, avoiding the young men trap, choosing character and legacy over swag and that instant chemistry, recognizing the value of a goal over a boyfriend.
Fourth, the anti-poker approach. Courageous transparency. You lay your cards on the table, even when it's scary.
And finally, strategic alignment. Understanding that submission to a man of integrity is the key that unlocks his capacity to serve you.
It really is like a military operation when you lay it out like that. It's so strategic. It's not just follow your heart and hope for the best.
It is. And I think the source challenges the listener to ask a very difficult question. What are you actually looking for?
Right. Are you looking for a partner to entertain you or a partner to sustain a multi-generational vision?
That's the crux of it. If you want entertainment, go to the young men in Moab, play the games, keep your poker face. You'll have fun for a season. But if you want a legacy, if you want redemption, you have to adopt the Ruth archetype.
It's a lot to chew on. It definitely challenges that modern narrative that says you are enough and follow your bliss. This is saying you need a strategy and follow the covenant.
Redeeming romance isn't about bliss. It's about building a house that lasts.
We'd love to hear what you think about this Ruth archetype. Does it sound like a restriction or does it sound like a strategy for freedom?
It's certainly a strategy for something much bigger than just a wedding day.
Absolutely. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.